Hi, this is Tisch Aitken, and it is Tuesday, August 26th, 2025. We are officially in eclipse season, which began the day after the sun entered the sign of Virgo. We began Virgo season on Friday, August 22nd, and the sun will remain in Virgo through September 22nd, when we begin the fall equinox in the northern hemisphere and the fall equinox in the southern. And right now in Virgo season, it's going to be very intense. This is a time of cleaning things up and getting organized, focusing on your habits and your work and your routines. And this is when people go back to school, and it often feels like a new start, a new beginning. But right now, we are in eclipse season, which means there are major turning points. Eclipses make us see things in a way we never have before. And when we had the new moon in Virgo, it was at the very first degree of Virgo. It was at 0 degrees and 23 minutes. And it squared Uranus, which is the planet of awakening. Surprises, twists and turns, excitement and unpredictability, but it also brings a sense of truth and a sense of change and excitement. And Uranus reminds me of eclipses because it is the great awakener. And again, it brings change, and it definitely is, whatever you think it is with a Uranus transit, expect something else. It's expect the unexpected. And with eclipses, they also can bring major beginnings and endings, and they bring things to light. Maybe it's something you had no idea about, and in a flash, it changes your life altogether. Or it could be something that's been building up for a while, and it finally boils over. And so we're in this season. We're going to have a major total lunar eclipse on September 7th. And that's going to be at 15 degrees and 22 minutes of the mutable water sign of Pisces. And I'll talk more about that later in the week, and I'll write about it and be talking about the eclipses a lot. But right now, we've got quite a bit at play. So Venus, which is the planet of love, beauty, value, and creativity, among other things, entered the fixed fire sign of Leo. And it loves being in Leo, and today it already made a beautiful sextile, which is an aspect of opportunity, to Uranus, the planet of innovation and excitement and networking. And that could bring unexpected financial, social, and romantic opportunities. That is very exciting. And Uranus is about to retrograde in September, the day before the first eclipse. So just as the new moon squared Uranus and the sun in Virgo squared Uranus on the following day, bringing twists and turns to that new moon, Uranus is going to be very prevalent in the beginning of September during the eclipse season as we begin it. I mean, we're going to be in eclipse season for a little while, but that's going to bring it to another level of, I think, reveals, because Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, and Mercury rules the sign of Virgo, and the total lunar eclipse is in Pisces, but we're going to have a second new moon, which will be a solar eclipse on September 22nd at the final degree of Virgo, at 29 degrees of Virgo. And as I mentioned, Venus is now in Leo, bringing us some fire, more fire to the sky. We have, right now we have 4 points in Aries. And I'll get to one turning point in a minute, which is very crucial for this fall, and really for the next 5 months or so, is that, so today we've got Venus, made a helpful aspect to Uranus, excitement, creativity, innovation. Venus forms a beautiful angle to Neptune at 6:14 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and that's that's a beautiful creative energy. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, very romantic, very creative, very spiritual. And our spirituality is key because Saturn and Neptune are both retrograde. They both retrograded in the month of July, early and mid-July, but they're returning to the sign of Pisces, which is the final sign of the Zodiac, and we're clearing up and finishing up a lot of old karma, old spiritual beliefs, I think limiting beliefs that are holding us back, maybe our fears that aren't real. I mean, they might be, we may feel they're real, but things that are blocking us that we need to take care of. And also connecting to our spirituality as both a guide and a tool to get us through this whole new reality that we're all co-creating. And so we have Venus making beautiful aspects. We have Mercury forming a challenging aspect to the North Node of Fate, and that occurs at 10:23 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And there's a readjustment in how you are learning or connecting to your path. And it's a minor aspect, but it's still something to figure that, you know, there's going to be so much information pouring through in the next 6 weeks with the eclipses so strong. And Virgo is, ruled by Mercury, again, the planet of communication, and a lot of powerful aspects with this. So we have Venus in Leo opposing Pluto, the cosmic compost, at 10:54 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time tonight, and on August 27th at 1:54 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And that can definitely bring endings. It's eliminating that which is keeping you from your creativity, from what's making you happy, from love, from feeling loved, from giving love, and preparing you for all the magic that's ahead. And we've gotten previews this summer, and particularly the end of this month, we're working with a magic triangle, and that's really strong. And that involves Saturn and Neptune. Even though Saturn is about to return to Pisces, they're building a new dream and have been working very closely in the sign of Aries, really the last couple of months, in the sign of new beginnings. Saturn is in its fall position in Aries and is challenged, but it's also cardinal fire. And we've got Chiron, the wounded healer, currently in the sign of Aries. We've got Eris, the goddess of discord, Mars' sister, who doesn't back down from a fight when she sees injustice or feels it around her and witnesses it. She stands up for herself and for others especially. So there's very strong fire in spite of, Saturn bringing a limelight on limitations. And at times I think it's been really hard to harness this energy in a different way. I find Saturn in Pisces to be difficult. It may not be in its fall position like it is in Aries. It's not in its detriment. It's not in anything challenging per se. But I have found when it occurs, when Saturn transits in Pisces historically, and people that I know personally that have it in their charts, there's a wounded element to it. There's a healing element, but often there can be issues with depression or addiction. And, we have Saturn going back to the final degree of the Zodiac, and it will remain in Pisces from September 1st through February 13th. And it's going to initially be at the fixed star known as Shiad, and that's at 29 degrees of Pisces. That is a very difficult fixed star connected with self-undoing and self-sabotage, and very difficult with dealing with mental health. So we really want to be aware of that energy and finding, again, the spiritual tools, because we're wrapping up old karma, we're releasing old stories, again, old fears, as we embrace a new beginning, which involves connection. Uranus and Gemini helps to catalyze incredible ways to learn with technology and with medicine and so many different frequencies and light and different ways that we're going to learn and evolve and open our consciousness, but also focusing more locally than we have in a while because we've become so alienated. And the global technological progression that is so amazingly fast, that is not slowing down anytime, of course, but Uranus and Gemini is bringing light again to the fact that we also need to connect in person, and there will be a hybrid of that, and that will facilitate our being able to connect on a more global level. It will help our mental health. Saturn and Pisces can also feel very submerged and lost and in a fog where you're not connected to others. Maybe you are emotionally or intuitively. And for all of us, this could be an incredible time for heightening and working with your intuitive and spiritual and psychic abilities. But it can also feel very ambivalent at times and very confusing. And, just being aware that Venus opposite Pluto right now on the brink of Saturn entering or returning to Pisces, I should say, because Saturn retrograded on July 13th. It's been retrograde a while. And it will station direct on November 27th at 25 degrees of Pisces, which is exactly where the total lunar eclipse occurred last September of 2024. And then another eclipse occurred in Virgo at 24 degrees, almost 25 degrees of Virgo, March 14th of this year. Setting off that story, Saturn is bringing a reframing and closure to this. And again, Saturn is ending things that are not serving your growth. And for people that are hanging on by a thread in relationships, physically, for people that are very vulnerable, Pisces is, the body is, it's ethereal, it's not physical. And between all the air that we're going towards with the Uranus-Pluto trine that becomes exact in July of next year, Neptune in Aries in a fire sign, but the fire and air energy, which is very magical and opportune for so much growth and optimism and new beginnings, we're also letting go of many things in our lives. And again, we're getting more towards a cerebral, spiritual path and less of the physical. And there are going to be different values in this whole frequency as well. But my feeling is that it's going to be a very confusing and revealing September. Saturn returning to Pisces can be tough. You want to really check in on with yourself and with other people struggling with mental health issues. When Neptune returns to Pisces, it will be October 22nd through January 26th, and it will only go back to 29 degrees of Pisces. So really right at that fixed star Shiat, wrapping up an old story as we prepare for both Saturn and Neptune meeting up at the very first degree of the Zodiac of Aries, which is a sign of new beginnings, the first sign of the Zodiac, and also at the world axis, bringing profound new beginnings on a global level, but things dissolving on a global level too. And I think more of a spiritual path. Some argue that Neptune and Aries can lack empathy or sympathy because Aries is so self-focused. But in the other vantage, you could say that it's a new beginning with spirituality that you're structuring after gleaning the lessons of all this Pisces karma, of the eclipses in Pisces Virgo, of Saturn and Neptune traveling together very closely in the sign of Pisces the last year or so, because they got pretty close in the last degrees of Pisces by that fixed star. There's a lot of wisdom with that difficult journey we've all been on. And I know this is going to be a tough fall. There's going to be a lot we're letting go of with Venus opposite Pluto, with Saturn returning to Pisces, with the solar eclipse in Virgo opposite Saturn and Neptune. Neptune will still be in Aries at that time. It's going to be close to where Saturn was in the last week or so. But Saturn will be within a degree of opposing that eclipse. So eclipses are like wild cards. You can have a major new beginning on a full moon eclipse, which is generally more about culmination and completion. And you can have a major beginning, a major ending on a new moon eclipse, because one really defines the other. To have a major ending, there's also a new beginning in that story. And when you begin something, you're also ending different things as well. So they define each other. And a lot of people are going to be saying goodbye to relationships. There's a lot around work and new beginnings, but also endings, and also figuring out Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. They defer to where the North Node is transiting through the summer of next year. And that's about being of service and helping those that can't help themselves. And again, a spiritual path. I wish you a lot of luck. We've got Jupiter making a beautiful trine to the North Node of Karma on September 3rd. That's going to be very magical energy, very creative. It's a good time to network. Mercury enters the sign of Virgo on September 2nd at 9:23 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Mercury will be in its dignity for a good portion of the eclipse season. It will be there through September 18th, and then the second eclipse will be September 22nd. Mercury in Virgo is really good for, again, getting organized this eclipse season, doing your work, doing your research. And we have Uranus retrograding on September 6th at 4:06, no, sorry, I think it's at 12:23 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, but it's early in the morning on the 6th of September, the day before the total lunar eclipse. We're going to start feeling the energy of Uranus starting September 1st, the day that Saturn returns to Pisces. So it's going to feel foggy, emotional, confusing with Saturn in Pisces. Again, maybe blocked on how you move ahead. And then you've got Uranus bringing a lot of excitement and surprises. And that energy of Uranus, both the brilliance, the chaos, and the disruption, emphasized very strongly 5 days before and 5 days after the retrograde, which is September 6th at 1 degree and 28 minutes of Gemini. Uranus will return to Taurus on November 7th, and then it will station direct on February 3rd at 27 degrees of Taurus. So Uranus is not yet done with its journey in Taurus, where it doesn't like being, because Taurus likes stability. Saturn and Neptune are both not done with their tour in Pisces, which is wrapping up an old story as we're all co-authoring a new dream and a new vision together, which involves hopefully love and humanity, because we've got Uranus forming a beautiful sextile to Neptune on August 28th, and that is a magical energy of spiritual evolution and creativity and dreams and spiritual consciousness. So I wish you a lot of luck. Big time. If you have trouble sleeping, if you have flashes of insight coming out of the blue, write them down. You could feel very creative and inspired. People that have passed over could come to you in your dreams, and you're going to hear a lot of big news both on the world front and on your front. So good luck. Take care.